Start that recording. All right, so we are now recording, and anything I say is going to be in little digits and zeros and ones and decibels going forward for the next hour or so. So I want to welcome you to this particular webinar about programs and self-directed activities and how we can count them using a new spreadsheet tool that I developed, which will help you with both your annual report each year, as well as the summer reading report that you will be sending to Kim Poe by October 1st. So my address right here is on the first slide. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. An email right now is the best way because you can probably see behind me, I'm at home. We're still working from home a few days a week, and the phone is something I can check remotely, but I only usually check it a couple times a day. So email I'm getting constantly if you have questions. All right, so we are going to talk about programs, and I'm going to say right off the bat that if you have attended one of the sort of companion webinars about new questions on the annual report this year, then much of this information will be the same. You're going to see the exact same slides. I'll probably say the same things. Maybe that duplication will help to cement those concepts for you, but just FYI, you're probably going to be hearing a lot of the same things that you heard in that other webinar. Likewise, if you want to know more about the annual report and you're only coming now to the programs webinar, I do have one of those about the annual report and new questions. That webinar is scheduled for, I think, next week on Tuesday. So you can check the LibGuides and we'll take a look at that. But anyway, we're here to talk about programs and questions and things like that, but I always want to start by reminding everybody of the difference between the state annual report that each public library collects and sends to me and your own reports that you're compiling for your library for your own purposes. And because the state report is a statewide thing and a nationwide thing, we're all using the same set of questions nationwide. So pretty much every public library across the country is answering very similar questions, and their data is getting submitted to IMLS for inclusion in the Public Libraries Survey, which tells the story of public libraries across our country and really shows the impact of libraries in a really dynamic way. But because it's nationwide, it can take a long time to change both those questions and the data that we're getting out of it. So there is a long process of how the questions themselves get changed and tested and updated, and then how the data itself takes time to become more accurate over a couple-year period. So it takes a while to change. And the asterisk is, unless there's a pandemic, as there was, in which case IMLS did roll out a lot of really quick questions, yes or no questions, just to try and measure that really extreme event that happened. So that's kind of the exception. Other things take a long time. We do in each state have the option to add additional local questions to the annual report, which we do in Connecticut. And this year you'll be able to tell the difference between which are the Connecticut questions and which are the nationwide questions that get reported up to IMLS. So I'll show you where that column is if you haven't already seen it as we go forward. But that's really a holistic view of what your public library is doing that you send to me once a year, in comparison and contrast to your library's reports that you might compile monthly or quarterly to provide to your funders, your board, your capital F friends, the finance department, however that works. And your reports are obviously under your control and can tell any story you want them to tell. So I do encourage you to always capture more detail than you're sending to me in the statewide annual report, because what you're doing is really deeper than what you are able to report to me, particularly with regard to reference transactions, technical tech assistance, the one-on-one tech help that everybody's doing. There's some really dynamic, interesting things happening in our libraries that I encourage you to document and tell your funders about. So that's the difference. And we are going to steamroll right into programs. So this is where you're going to use your chat box if you have questions. I realize I'm talking very quickly. I'm going to try and slow that down a little bit. so that the transcription has time to catch up with me and you guys have time to catch up with what I'm saying. So I want to remind you of this definition of what a program is according to IMLS. So in the annual report, we're using definitions and criteria that are given to us by IMLS, right? So we're comparing apples and apples. And they've defined a program as a planned event, which is a key part of this definition. And that planned event introduces the group attending, another key point of the definition, to library services or which directly provides information to participants. So what I want you to hear from that is programs are really designed for a group, not one-on-one. That's something else. And they're planned, right? They're scheduled, they're on the calendar. You get the word out, your marketing, and your participants, your patrons plan to attend. And this definition is really more patron focused, right? It's about them and their planning, your planning, them attending, and the information you're providing to them. So that's a program. That third bullet point, I do want to point out to you, you're going to exclude those one-on-one activities, and that you could count those somewhere else, right? So literacy tutoring may fall somewhere else on your own library's reports. Book a librarian sessions is probably a reference transaction. Some of these may be volunteer activities like your services to the homebound. Other things may be something you provide space for, like homework assistance and tutoring. So there's a lot that happens in your library that does not qualify for the IMLS definition of a program. So please always take a look at that definition as you're filling this out. And as a reminder, as you have in the past, make sure you're counting all programs that are sponsored or co-sponsored by your library. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more co-sponsorships happen as virtual events continue and as libraries get together and pool finances to be able to get perhaps a higher price presenter than you may have been able to get on your own. And you can provide access to that person online in a bigger way than you could provide in person in a meeting room with certain fire code capacities. So co-sponsorships may be going more as we go forward. Be sure you are not including programs that are sponsored by other groups that are just using your meeting room. So an example of this might be the Girl Scouts who have borrowed your meeting room for a recruitment event. Fabulous for the Girl Scouts, wonderful thing for them, but not a program for you. Where you can count that is a separate question on the annual report, which is use of your meeting room. So that's another great thing to be counting along the way for your stats. And then as we have in the past, if your programs are offered as a series, make sure you're counting each program in that series. An example of that might be a 8-week story time. Maybe in your library, you have people sign up and register for that sort of story time series, and you get to count each week, each one of those as a program. So that's 8 programs. So here are some really typical programs that are happening in libraries or sponsored by libraries. That story time, wherever it happens, whether it's on your premises or offsite at a community center, maybe the farmer's market on the green, a beach, that's a great program, very typical. You might also be doing a presentation about your resources to students at school. If that happens, you could be there in person. And I have heard from libraries that have been doing that virtually through Zoom sessions with the students. So that would be a program as well. Other typical ones are tech or gaming clubs, Dungeons and Dragons, chess club, things like that, and summer reading events. So those are great programs. These things are not programs. So this is a handy list to keep nearby. So remember, those one-on-one activities are not meeting the definition of a program for IMLS. So you wouldn't be counting them here. You might count them somewhere else. Likewise, self-directed activities, or what we may have called passive activities, don't qualify as programs, but now you get to count those as self-directed activities on the spreadsheet and in your annual report. So some examples of that might be those fabulous take and make kits, the grab and goes that libraries have been doing so well and so dynamically over the past year. Those have been super popular. Just keep track of them as self-directed activities. Likewise, a craft project, when we got to be able to have people in our library in person, sometimes maybe a children's room would leave out a craft on the table, and parents could just drop in with kids on a Saturday morning, follow the directions that are written there, do whatever they wanted to with the craft table. But they weren't really expecting any kind of exchange or instruction or interchange with the librarian and the library staff. It was just something that they could do on their own if they wanted to on their own time frame whenever they dropped in. Another great self-directed activity to keep track of. And then another typical example of an activity is a library card sign-up booth. So say you're at the farmer's market, you're frantically signing people up for new library cards. There's a line of people. It's fabulous. That was a great self-directed activity. In contrast, if you were offering a story time at the farmer's market, that would be a program in terms of being a scheduled, planned event for a group that's attending. So those are some interesting distinctions you can make there. All right, so as we were thinking about programs, you're going to pick only one format for your programs. And we'll see this on the spreadsheet in a few minutes when we get there. But you'll have the option to pick just one. And if you are offering it in multiple formats, go ahead on your spreadsheet and always defer to entering an in-person format first. We're going to give credit to the in-person component. So if you remember, only 2 years ago, we would just ask very simple questions about programs. We would say, how many programs did you offer for this age? And what was your attendance at programs for that age? It was really simple and easy, and it didn't take a lot of work to keep track of it. Last year, we added a little complexity, and we started breaking that apart to how many in-person programs did you offer? And then how many virtual programs did you offer? And then attendance at each. So, okay, we added a little layer. We got used to counting that. And now IMLS says we want to break that apart even farther. So now we've got 4 questions per age group. And with the in-person questions, they really want to dig into whether you're offering it on-site on the library premises or off-site. And what they mean by on-site is anywhere on your library property. So that could be in the building, in the foyer, in the parking lot, on the lawn, in the treehouse, on the roof, on the deck. So if you are on library property, on library premises, that counts as on-site. I had a fascinating question from one of the few libraries with a bookmobile. And in fact, if you have a bookmobile and you're offering programs from the bookmobile, those are on-site programs. So that's a nice thing to remember. Off-site programs then are any programs that don't happen on your library premises, right? So that again could be farmers market on the green, could be senior center, could be the local community center. So any place that's not your library. That I think we can figure out. Then looking at the virtual programs, those got broken apart to either synchronous ones or asynchronous. And so if you've taken any online classes, you may be familiar with this concept of synchronous classes being ones that are scheduled that you have to attend right then, right? Like you have to tune in every week at the same time to capture that lecture and to be part of the discussion. So those would be synchronous live programs. And in contrast, there are asynchronous or on-demand programs where you can tune in anytime you want, right? Like 2 a.m, you could hop in there and watch it. So those are asynchronous. And the terminology we're using here are live virtual, which is the synchronous programs, versus pre-recorded or on-demand programs. So those are the formats you'll be checking off once you get to your spreadsheet. And make sure you're counting your program only once. You can count a program in multiple, you're going to count it under one format, but you can count in-person attendance as well as live virtual attendance if you're also streaming that program. And then if you have posted a recording of that program, you can count the number of people who have viewed it. So you can still capture all of those numbers for that one program. That's an option. As we have in the past, you're going to count your programs based on the age of the intended audience. Now, IMLS used to request program counts for ages 0 to 11, and they have subdivided that now ages 0 to 5, so more of an early literacy, pre-literacy kind of age versus ages 6 to 11. So that is a new thing that we're going to be counting going forward in terms of kids programming. In our annual report this year, those numbers are smushed together so you can report them ages 0 to 11. But going forward next year, we are going to separate those out so we can really see the children in more detail. Also, IMLS clarified the age for teen or young adult programs is ages 12 to 18 as your intended audience. And adult programs are ages 19 and up, everybody who's older than 19. And then IMLS is using the term general interest for all of those intergenerational or family or all ages programs. And again, chess club is a really typical kind of general interest or intergenerational kind of program example. So that's always the age of the program's primary intended audience. And remember, anytime we have like a story time for toddlers, you're going to count that as a children's program, whether it's live in person or live virtual. You'll count it in the correct format, and then you'll count the number of children and number of caregivers as your total attendance for that program. Okay, just want to remind you the chat box is open. You guys are deadly silent. I'm looking for reassurance that anybody's out there. So please drop a question in the chat or say hi and reassure me that you're there. Whoops. All right, so here, let's talk about programs and program attendance. Anytime you have people together in person, you're going to count them. Yes, thank you, Susan. You're going to count your in-person people as you usually do, whether that's heads or faces or butts in the seats, however you count them. With your live virtual programs, you're going to count the number of unique viewers or live viewers. And that terminology may be slightly different depending on the platform that you use for streaming or presenting that particular program. Now, I want to reassure you at this point, there is also a tool developed by my fellow state data coordinators to help you find this information. So I'm going to show you that when we get to that point too. But you'll count live virtual attendance while the program is live. And for your pre-recorded programs, you're not going to report any attendance, but you will report the number of views of that program. And I can show you how to find that information as well. All right, so when we talk about views, this is something that we tracked for last year's annual report. So conceptually, we're a little familiar with it. It is the number of times somebody plays your recording. So whether it's a video or an audio recording, podcasts do count. You'll be looking at the number of times somebody clicked play and actually watched it or listened to it. So this is not the number of people who liked your post about the video. That's fabulous, but you're going to count that somewhere else. In terms of views, it's how many times somebody actually watched it or listened to it. So that's the metric you're looking for. Now, this third bullet point, I want to draw your attention to this part in red, in bold. This is a change that we will be counting the number of views after 7 days going forward, instead of the end of the fiscal year or the end of the month, which is what we had been doing. So whatever numbers you have up until now, don't worry, right? Do not get stressed. Do not go back and recount the past 11 and a half months of programs to try and get the number of views after 7 days, because it's going to be impossible and you're going to drive yourself crazy. All right. So in your annual report this summer, go ahead and send me the number of views that you have for your programs, and we're going to pop it in there. But starting today and going forward through July 1st, and then really clicking in, starting with the new reporting year on July 1st, make sure that you're counting the number of views after 7 days that the recording has been up. So maybe that's just a reminder For yourself, if you're posting something on Monday, double back the following Monday and check the number of views on it. I know that adds a little bit to the management of these things, but I'm hoping that it will just become part of your routine and you'll go into the spreadsheet and grab these numbers. And if you are posting videos to multiple platforms, be sure you're counting all of those views and adding them up in your spreadsheet so you're getting credit for all of that. Might as well give yourself full credit for all the work. Okay, I did not mention earlier that these slides are already on our LibGuides, and this link right here that with the Google Sheet is on the LibGuides. So at, when are we ending here? 3 o'clock. At 4 o'clock today, you're going to get an email from me that includes a link to the LibGuide page with these slides, with the program recording when I get it up, with a lot of information about programs, the link to the spreadsheet. So there's going to be a magic page with all of this information. So you don't have to write all this down, and all of these links will be available to you. And I'm sorry, Susan, I just saw your question. Why that number? Is that a reference to the number of 7 days? If that's so, IMLS selected 7 days.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. They had to pick something. And I think they picked 7 days partly because there are some measures already in the social media platforms that count at 7 days, or that's an easy sort of metric to get. But they wanted everybody to be consistent and had to come up with something. So they used 7 instead of 2 weeks or a month or whatever, just as something that's easier to count. So going forward, we're just going to stick with that and believe their logic and go along with them on that. All right, so this second bullet point I put there right there in black and white. Please do not backtrack and recount. Just use this metric of 7 days going forward. Okay, so this Google Sheet, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that's where we're going to find instructions for both the live attendance as well as the views. So we'll get there. But before we do that, I want to show you, here's what the annual report is going to look like. And these are the questions specifically about teen programs. And you'll see now how this entire section about programs has become much more complex and much more granular, a lot more detail in here. So, this first column here is new. And this is the one that tells you whether this is a Connecticut question, in which case the abbreviation will be CT. That one should be pretty easy. Or a US question. An IMLS question is US, it's national. That was the best abbreviation I could come up with that was 2 letters, that was short, that seemed to make sense. And then F stands for a feeder question that feeds into an IMLS question. So sometimes IMLS asks these big sort of total number questions, and I can't give them the total until I ask you for all of the extra little bits in between. So that's what a feeder question is that I need to ask you these little bits in order to get to the big total that they're asking for. So you'll see here, we start with the number of programs, whether they're on-site, off-site, or live virtual for each age range. And then this total is an automated formula that we'll just fill in the form for you. And then you will put here the number of pre-recorded or on-demand programs. So that's kind of the number of programs at the top. And then we get into attendance and views, and it's the same order. And these questions will appear in the same order in each age range. And I kind of thought grouping them by ages would be easiest for you, so that perhaps the teen librarian could pop in and fill in this section, and the children's librarian could provide information about children's programs. Adult services can provide those numbers that everybody's got their little chunk that they can take a look at. So that's what the annual report will look like this year. I did add these little kind of notations, whether a question was edited this year or new this year, because that I think helps to draw your eye to those questions. It's like a visual marker, so you know something is different here, right? This is not the usual thing that I have been answering in the past years. This is something new and different, and I do need to perhaps pay a little more attention to it. It also helps me as I'm going through this report to see what's new and what has changed. So those are there. All right, finally, these self-directed activities. These are a Connecticut specific question. Self-directed activities are currently not included in the National Public Library Survey, although many other states are also collecting this data for their states. So it is possible that at some point we'll be able to feed this up to show a national picture of these things. But for the time being, self-directed activities are a Connecticut concept, and I'm just asking about the number of activities for each age range, as well as the number of participants in those activities. And you'll see that I'm using terminology very specifically where I'm pairing programs and attendance. So people who are actually attending your programs versus activities and participants. So those are the language pairings that you'll see going forward as I describe these in the annual report and on the documentation. So the definition of a self-directed activity is here on the bottom of the slide, that it's provided by library staff for patrons. Yep. Typically, occasionally, it's not always scheduled. It could be a drop-in, but there's no expectation of staff interaction while that activity is being completed, right? So the kids are taking home the take and make kit and doing it at home on the kitchen table without the expectation that library staff will be interacting while they're doing it. And those self-directed things can happen on site or off site as well. So here's what the questions will look like in the annual report. You'll see on this column here, these are all Connecticut questions. And we're grouping the number of activities at the top by age range, and then the number of participants in those activities also by age range. And the ages throughout the annual report go in that same sequence as well. So it tries to be orderly. When we get to the spreadsheet, you'll see that the totals in the spreadsheet are in the same order as well. So I'm hoping it'll be easy to transfer the totals from your tracking spreadsheet into the annual report. Okay, so this new Excel spreadsheet that I created is really just for you guys to make your lives easier. You can use it however you want, and you're never going to send that particular spreadsheet back to me. You're just going to use it to track, to capture, to monitor what's happening, and then you're going to grab the totals either at the end of your summer reading program or at the end of the reporting year to put into the reports that you send to me and to Kim Poe. How you use the spreadsheet is up to you and open to local interpretation. There are a couple options in the spreadsheet. You can either, if you want, print out some of the sheets and track them manually, like actually with your pen and pencil, like put little hash marks and count up things on the printout. If you want to do that, that's just going to make more work for you. I think it's going to add up to being a lot of math. So what I recommend is that you use the Excel tool and keep track of things, enter things into the spreadsheet so that the spreadsheet is doing the math for you, so you don't have to. That's the magic of it. And I think there's my email again. So let's actually hop over to here. Actually, let's just make that. Yeah. So this is the URL that I'm going to send you at 4 o'clock that gets you over to this annual report tab on the statistics page. And it's going to get you down to this programs tab right down here. So if you ever need to navigate here, if you're on our LibGuides and you're like, oh my God, where is that thing? Because there's a lot of pages on here and it's very dense. You're going to go up to services and you're going to pull down to library statistics. So pretty much anything that's a statistical thing, whether it's our statistical profile, our annual report, our chart and report creators, are on this one great big LibGuide. And when we get the profile data, it's going to be here. But the annual report tab is really what we're focusing on right now. And when the annual report form is available in mid-July, it will be under this tab. It's going to be 2021 annual report. And if you want, you can take a look right now to the changes in this report this year. There's some recordings here. You can register if you want for that session on Tuesday afternoon, but there's a list here of all the new questions. Let me make that a little bigger for you. There, all the new questions. But what we're looking at is programs. So this Programs tab. This right here, Program and Activity Counts, is the Magic Spreadsheet that I'm going to show you in just a minute. This is version 2. Over the winter, I think November or December, I had uploaded a version 1 that was more rudimentary. It sort of did the job, but it didn't have all of the bells and whistles, and it won't help you as much as I thought it would. So I created version 2. And if you had downloaded version 1 at any point, I encourage you to grab the new version, copy and paste your data into this new version, and use this going forward because it's going to be a lot more useful for you. Also, if you downloaded version 2 prior to May 26th, grab it again because the filtering stuff isn't working. I noticed a bug. So make sure you're working with the most recent version of this spreadsheet. And this will help you keep track of everything, again, just for your convenience. So the slides from the presentation are right here. If you need to hop back in and download those as a reminder, it's right here as a PDF. You can grab those. And then as we go down, I'm going to post the recording of our session right here. So this register is going to turn into recording, and that will be today's recording. In the meantime, you could scope out the other recordings if you want to. They're largely the same. Now, as we scroll down, these will look familiar. This is basically what we saw on the slides, a reminder of the formats, the audience ages, a reminder of attendance versus views versus participants. Now, right here, I want to draw your attention to this handy guide. And I'll open that up. And that's where we're going to actually see this guidance. And this was developed, as I mentioned, by my fellow state data coordinators who are going through these same issues in their own states, trying to guide libraries through all of these complex platforms and trying to gather the same information from each library in each state, which gets a little tricky. So say, for instance, that you did a program in Zoom, and it was a live program, and then you captured the recording and posted it on YouTube. So we know it was a Zoom program, so let's hop over to Video Conferencing tab right down here. And we will see on our Zoom platform, here's the terminology of what the live attendance metric would be and what terminology Zoom uses for that. And then here's where you would find that information in Zoom in order to get the number of attendance at your live virtual program. If you had also grabbed a cloud recording of that Zoom program and you wanted to see how many people had viewed that cloud recording, here's how you would find that right over here in this other color. So that option is there. Now, say for instance, let's go back to README here, that you also posted that recording on YouTube. You'll want to take a look at the video sharing tab. So here's YouTube right at the top. And we'll scroll over and take a look at the recorded metric. We're going to be looking for the number of views. And here's how we would find that for the first 7 days. So there's a ton of great information right here in this spreadsheet. You can look up many different kinds of platforms that I don't even know what they are. Roll20, I am not familiar with. So options are here. If you use a platform that is not listed here, please let me know, because this particular spreadsheet is a work in progress constantly. And if there's something new that we can add to it, that would be really helpful for obviously other libraries in other states. But I'm going to hop back to this annual report. So remember, that was under this handy guide. So it's here in programs, and it's also in the spreadsheet. There's a link in the spreadsheet that will get you back there. So scrolling down, here's some more examples of programs, examples of self-directed activities. Here are some FAQs about programs and how you would record them. And virtual programs that you're co-hosting. Here's some great options for how you would count that. So most of those questions are included in the spreadsheet as well. And then these definitions of what's a program, what's a pre-recorded program, and what's a self-directed activity. Those are all included on this page right here. So that information is there. And it's also in the spreadsheet. So we're going to hop over and take a look at the spreadsheet. I already downloaded. I see a question in the chat. For Zoom, do we delete ourselves and the presenter from the total number of attendees? I think that goes back to how you would count yourself if you were live and in person. So if you were in your usual program room, attending a program, you were hosting a program there, would you normally count yourselves? And would you normally count the presenter as an attendee? So follow your usual procedures for how you count people, whether you are in person and you can count heads, or whether you're live virtual, or whether it's a pre-recorded viewing. So just keep the same practices. Let's hop over to the download. So when you download this program and activity sheet, you'll enable editing, and you'll see right here on the definitions tab, this is all the exact same content that I grabbed right off the LibGuide. Here's that link, right? So this link right here is going to get us back to the Google spreadsheet with all of that fabulous information here. Great. So that is right there. Nope, this one, right there in the spreadsheet where you need it. You can hop on over there. So this, I copy and pasted again, FAQs, definitions, copy and pasted. But it's right here in this tool if you want to take a quick look over there. You don't need to go to the LibGuide. It's all there. This next tab, annual totals, is all of the formulas. So everything that you'll need for your summer reading report as well as your annual report will come up in the annual totals here. And you'll see a note up here that the totals calculate automatically as you're typing things into the next spreadsheet tab. And we're not going to see anything there now because there's no data there. But if you click on these zeros, you can see in the formula bar here that these are fairly complex formulas. And I have protected this sheet. So I have locked down and disallowed you from making any changes to this particular annual total sheet because I don't want anybody messing with the formulas and deleting them. So you will not be able to make any changes to this sheet. It will automatically calculate everything for you. And you'll see here up at the top, SRP stands for Summer Reading Program. In my next version of this report, I am going to spell out or otherwise explain SRP equals Summer Reading Program. It's an abbreviation I use myself and did not realize that obviously not everybody else is using my abbreviation for summer reading. So that's what that means. These first three questions in each age range are always about summer reading. And these totals you'll enter in your summer reading report due to Kim by October 1st. And then these next totals are what you'll include in your annual report that you're going to send to me. Again, these questions are in the same order here as they are in the annual report, divided by age ranges. And as we scroll down, you'll see here's the older kids, they're grouped together, the teens are grouped together, the adults are together. Here's that sort of intergenerational general interest section right in here. And some nice sums that we can pull together. These also go into the annual report, although that report may calculate these automatically as well. And then the self-directed activities are right down here. So again, same order that you're going to see them on the annual report. All right, let's hop over to this next tab, Track in Spreadsheet. This is where the magic happens. Let's wait for a minute and appreciate it and appreciate its simplicity and the drop-down menus before we pop over to tally by hand on printout. So I put this version in there just in case you actually want to print something. It will print on one page, although I think it's going to be very small. But in theory, you could pop this onto a clipboard and keep it at a desk and track it by hand if you wanted to do so. Just making sure that you count everything up at the end of the month and that you're keeping track of it somehow so it makes sense for you. That option is there, but I really think tracking them in the spreadsheet is going to be a lot easier for everybody. So this is a tool. You can put it perhaps on your library server. So you've got one copy and multiple departments are adding to the same copy. Or if you wanted to, each department could keep their own copy, and children's and young adult and adults could all be tracking separately. And then you shove them together in your annual report at the end. That is okay. You can use it however you want. You can also upload this spreadsheet to Google Sheets if you're one of those environments that you tend to use Google Docs. I do want to caution you that when you upload to Google Sheets, the protections will not travel. So there is incompatibility between Excel and Microsoft Sheets in terms of protection. So if you upload it, I do encourage you to go ahead and protect this annual total sheet so that nobody's messing with it, right? So that it continues to calculate as it should. So totally up to you how you want to keep track of this, how you want to use it. But you just type right in here. We're going to do a story time. We're going to say it happened this morning. This is not part of our summer reading program. It's just something that we do year round. It happens to occur during the summer, but it's not specifically related to Tales and Tales this year. We're going to say we did this in person on site because it was out on the library lawn. Our target age for this was the little ones, ages 0 to 5. Our attendance in terms of children and caregivers this year was, this morning was 26. We did not stream this. It was not a live virtual program. It was only available on site and in person. So I'm not going to enter any attendance for live virtual programs. Likewise, we did not record and post it. So I'm not going to enter any views. It was only in person and on site. And it's not an activity, so I'm not going to enter any participants. So I am done entering that program. In contrast, say we did a concert the night before, and we specifically did tie this in with our summer reading program. We got somebody who did really fun animal songs and fish songs, and it was all Tales and Tales, and we had a great time. And this again was in person on site on the lawn. And this was really a general interest. Like it really was all ages. We had some families, we had some adults there who just came to hang out because it was free music and a beautiful night. So it was a general interest program. We had a really good crop of 64 people who came. We actually went around, counted all the blankets and counted all the heads. And we really weren't sure what the weather was going to be like. So we went ahead and had a live streaming version of this. And we noticed that 41 people were there as attendance for the live viewing. So we're going to count them. And we did not record the program. So I'm not going to put any views in there. But it may be that because we streamed it, we also recorded it and posted the recording after. And in that case, if we did, I would check it after 7 days and I'd say 67 people watched that recording, which is amazing. We're really thrilled with that outcome. We actually had 172 people who interacted with that particular program, with that concert. We're absolutely thrilled with that kind of return on investment and want to get that musician back. So that's how you would enter something like that. I want to hop over to a spreadsheet, a version of this that I've filled in with a lot of data so I can show you how you would sort of manage the data once you've got it in there. Let's take a look at the annual totals. Now you see here, they've started to fill themselves in based on the data that we've entered. So there's good stuff in here. Well, we haven't done any summer reading programs for teens yet. Nothing showing up there. Let's see, we must have done them all for families and kids, but the numbers are filling in. Let's take a look at the data. This is organized right now chronologically by program date, but the magic of Excel is that you can sort this data in many different ways and make it work for you. And one of the things that I imagine you'll do is that you'll want to capture monthly statistics, right? Because you're probably reporting them to the director or to the board or maybe to some committee. And you want to be able to say, over the course of a month, we did this many programs for this aid, and this many people either attended or they participated in our activities. So you can do that with the Excel tools. These annual totals, I want to fix that in the next version because it's not really an annual total. It's just cumulative. It's just adding up everything that you've got in the track and spreadsheet tab. It doesn't care what the dates are. It doesn't care what you put in there. It's just adding it all up. So, you need to be cognizant of what these totals are grabbing and be aware of what you've got in this track and spreadsheet in terms of data. So just be careful. Maybe you want to keep a different copy of the spreadsheet for each fiscal year or each reporting year. That might help to address some of the totaling conundrums. Or maybe you just want to come in here and use it willy-nilly and grab your own totals, and you can use it however you like, whatever makes sense for you. But here's what it looks like for the data. And say, for instance, we wanted to find all of the things that happened in January. So let's take a look. If I click on that little box, there are a couple ways I can do this in Excel. I can either use the date filters to pick specific dates, so if I wanted to do something kind of in the middle of the month to the middle of the month, I would use a date filter, or I could just use these filters right here. So say I just want to see what happened in January 2021, that I just checked off January. And when I say okay, you'll see that Excel automatically is now just showing me only the things that happened in January. So that's one way to do it. Let's clear that filter, and I want to show you the other way to do it is these date filters. And you can pick any one of these and play with them and see how they work. See if they're useful for you. Last year, this year, next year, these are probably calendar years. Year to date is probably based on a calendar year versus a fiscal year. But we want to try between, and we're going to say January 1st and January 31st, and okay. So we're getting the exact same results that we did using the other method. Because it's Excel, there are usually 2 or 3 different ways you can do it, and those are 2 of them. So you'll see here we did, if I highlight all of that and come down here, you'll see the count. We did 6 programs in January. And then you can either sort these and see the different formats. We did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 live virtual programs and 1 self-directed activity. Or if you wanted, you could say, show me just the live virtual programs that we did in January. And then you could potentially sort these, let's say, by age. And you could say, oh, we did 4 live virtual programs for teens in January. That's one option. Let's clear these filters up here. If you want to clear a bunch of filters at once, this is the easiest way to do it, that clear. But let's go back instead and just say in January, okay, we offered 6 programs. Maybe we want to sort them by age. Great. So over the course of January, we did 4 programs for teens, 1 program for adults, and 1 program for the little guys. If I want to catch attendance at my teen programs, I'm just going to highlight all of those, come right down here, and Excel tells me that was 32 people who attended our 4 teen programs in January. So let Excel do the work for you right down here. Let's try another scenario that we wanted quarterly numbers. So we're going to do the first quarter of calendar year 2021. And I'm going to make sure, you know what, let me clear all my filters first, so I'm not messing up my data. January, February, March, grabbing that first quarter. Great. And I can see if I select, you can pick any column for selecting. If I select all of those, we did 20 programs over the quarter. Great. And then if I wanted to, I could pick specific ages. Great. And we did 5 programs for the little people, and attendance at our live virtual programs was 141. So that's how you would use this to grab sort of monthly or quarterly stats, however you want to get those for your library, whatever's going to work for you. Oops, oh, I have been ignoring chat questions. You can also use the magic of pivot tables. Susan, yes, if you could tell me how to do a pivot table, that is my dream for version 3, is to set up a pivot table in here so that each library could just pick a month and have the pivot table do the work for them. That's absolutely my dream. I got to investigate how to do that because I've never done a pivot table. So if you have resources on how to do that, please let me know. You just learned. Excellent. Yep, that's someday when we're done with ARPA grants and I've launched the annual report and I have a quiet summer day, that's going to be my next endeavor, is to look into pivot tables. Okay, so another question: if a recorded program was posted, for example, on June 20th on YouTube, you count views between June 20th through June 27th. Yes, that is it. Absolutely perfect. You're catching those 7 days. And thank you. That reminded me, I wanted to show you again here in the spreadsheet how we would enter something that was sort of offered in multiple formats. So folk songs on the library lawn here, I wanted to kind of show another example. This was an on-site program that we also live streamed and we posted the recording. So in a situation like that where it's happening in multiple formats, you're going to defer to the in-person component first. So you'd pick an in-person on-site for general interest audience. And here I get to record the in-person attendance as well as the live virtual attendance, as well as the number of views after 7 days of that recording. So that's how that looks. Did we look at an activity? We haven't looked at that yet. So this is what a self-directed activity might look like. You just pick self-directed activity from the drop-down menu, got our ages, and then all I'm going to report is the number of participants. So in this case, for instance, we prepared 50 take and make kits and they went like hotcakes. We got rid of all of them. So we're counting 50 participants in that take and make program. So there, and they come up here. So this column, sum for summer reading report, is based on what you enter here. So you'll see for D&D Club, it's something we offer year round. It's not specifically related to summer reading, so we said no. And then the sum for summer reading comes up here as 0. Okay, a question in the chat: would in-person story times that have an associated craft just count as in-person attendance, or would you split it between attendance and participants? That's going to be just an in-person program, either on-site or off-site, and you'll report the attendance for that. So not participants. So participants is really associated only with things that are specifically a self-directed activity. Yeah, because story time, like you usually do a craft during story time, right? But I think in that case, probably the librarian is helping people with the craft. You're really directing the craft. That it may be more of an engaging interaction between the staff and the attendees at that point. So make sure you're counting that as an in-person program. Great. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. I want to make sure that I've told you everything I want to tell you. I do want to point out that in this version here, track and spreadsheet, you actually can add columns here. If you want to play around with this particular spreadsheet, you can. So you can customize this however you want. If you wanted to make this a bigger font for some reason, you could do that. If you wanted to change the colors, you could do that. Please use this particular version however makes sense to you in the context of your library so that it is working for you. Again, I developed it because I knew that these questions from IMLS were coming and that it was going to be a reporting burden for so many libraries to be capturing all of this numbers in a very, very detailed way that we hadn't done before. So that's why I created this tool. But again, it's not mandatory. It's not required. It's not, there's no money hinging on this. It's just there if you want it. I suggest you use it to make your lives easier, but nobody's going to come after you and you don't have to send it to me. All you're ever going to send me are these totals in your annual report, and you'll send Kim those totals in your summer reading report. So that's the tool. Feel free to drop me emails if you would like to send me emails, but I have told you everything that I want to tell you for today. Great. All right. And not seeing any more questions, I'm going to say thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and I will see you again sometime soon. Take care. Bye-bye.